Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 1,200th regular meeting and public hearing of the Livonia City Planning Commission. I wish to inform all interested persons in our audience that for petitions on tonight's agenda, which involve a question of zoning, the Planning Commission will make a recommendation to the City Council. And the City Council, after holding their own public hearing, will make the final determination as to whether a petition is approved or denied. The Planning Commission holds the only public hearing on requests for preliminary plats and/or vacating petitions. The Commission's recommendation is forwarded to the City Council for the final determination as to whether the petition is accepted or rejected. If a petition requesting a waiver of use or a site plan is denied tonight, the petitioner will have 10 days in which to appeal the decision in writing to City Council. Resolutions adopted by the Planning Commission become effective 7 days after the date of adoption. The Planning Commission and professional staff have reviewed each of these petitions upon their filing. The staff has furnished the Commission with both approving and denying resolutions, which the Commission may or may not use depending on the outcome of the proceedings tonight. If our Secretary is ready, please call the roll.
Mrs. Donnell.
Here.
Mr. Bonjero.
Here.
Mr. Long.
Is here.
Ms. Ventura.
Is here.
Caremagno is here. Chairman Wilshaw.
Is here. Also with us tonight, we have Mark Tormina and Stephanie Reese from our Planning Department. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. For the folks in our audience who haven't been to one of our meetings before, the format is that we will call each of these items that are on our agenda tonight. Our planning staff will give background information to us about the petition. We'll then ask for the petitioner to come forward and speak to their item. We'll probably have some questions for that petitioner. And then we'll have an opportunity for anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak for or against the item to also come forward and give comments before we make our final decision. So with that, we'll prompt you along in the process so you know when you need to come up and which item we're on. So with that, if our Secretary is ready, we're going to start with item number 1 on the public hearing section of our agenda.
Petition 2023-04-01-03, submitted by Michael Morad under sections 13.13 and 13.15 of the Livonia zoning ordinance as amended, requesting to rezone the property at 20180 Westmore Street, located on the east side of Westmore between Farmington Road and Shadyside Street in the northwest quarter of Section 3 from N2 neighborhood to RUF rural urban farm.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Mr. Tormina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, this is a request to rezone a single residential property from N2 neighborhood to RUF rural urban farm. This is an unplatted property. It is located east of Farmington Road, south of 8 Mile Road. It's at the corner of Norfolk and Westmore Avenues. The purpose of the zoning change is to allow the property owners to keep chickens on their property. RUF zoning under section 6.34 allows the keeping of animals, including fowl, on properties with 1/2 acre or more of land. The RUF district also requires a minimum lot size of 15,000 square feet. The Morad's property measures 176 feet by 225 feet for a total of 39,600 square feet or 0.91 acres, which exceeds both of these requirements. In addition to the main residence and a detached garage, the site plan shows a small chicken coop that measures 7 feet by 7 feet, along with a 13-foot by 7-foot fenced-in enclosure or chicken run. The chicken coop and the chicken run are located in the property's rear or northeast corner. The applicant currently maintains, I believe, roughly 16 chickens on the property. The surrounding area consists mostly of residential. To the north, the east, and to the south are single-family homes, most of which are part of the Folkers Farmington Acres subdivision. And then west, across Westmore Street, is the Pine Brook Office Park, which is zoned C1 local business. The Livonia Vision Future Land Use Plan designates the subject area as low-density residential. A little bit of history about the zoning of the property. Before Livonia became a city, the zoning of this portion of Section 3 of the township was AG agriculture, and then when the city was incorporated in 1950, with the adoption of zoning ordinance number 60, the area was rezoned to RUF. In 1961, much of the north half of the section was rezoned from RUF to a classification called RLA, which stood for residential large lot. And then in 1965, with the adoption of ordinance number 543, the RLA district became R3. Then, in the last couple of years, with the adoption of the Livonia Vision 21 zoning ordinance, now the Livonia zoning ordinance, the R3 district became the N2 zoning. Since then, there have been 2 failed attempts to change the zoning of this part of Section 3, including the subject property, back to the RUF classification. The first attempt was in 1979 with when the request to change the area from R3 back to RUF was rejected, and then the second petition occurred in 1987, and that too was rejected. Concerns over the future effects of changing the zoning of this property could be addressed through a conditional zoning agreement, which, if voluntarily offered by the applicant, could limit the type and number of farm animals, how and where they're kept, as well as what happens should the applicants move. This conditional zoning agreement could be presented to City Council before the final adoption of any zoning change. And I'll just point that out to the Commission as a possible issue to discuss at this evening's meeting. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I will read out the correspondence on this item.
Yes, please.
And what I'll do is I'll read out the departmental correspondence. We received a number of letters from residents. I won't read all of those, since each of the commissioners has a copy of those. I'll just indicate how many. Well, in this case, there were 7 letters representing 10 homes that support the petition, and then 8 emails or letters were received that were opposed.
Okay.
The departmental correspondence is as follows. We had a letter from our engineering division that's dated May 12th, wherein they indicate that the existing parcel is currently serviced by public sanitary sewer, water main, and storm sewer. Per the submittal, there are no planned alterations to the sanitary sewer and the water main services, so they do not expect any impacts to the existing systems at this time. That letter is signed by David Lear, Assistant City Engineer. And then we have 2 letters, one coming from the Department of Finance dated May 19th, the other one coming from the Office of the Treasurer dated May 31st, indicating that they have no objections to the proposal, as there are no taxes or other city charges due at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Toromina. And as you noted, there are a number of emails and letters that we did receive from residents. Those are in our packet. We will receive and file those with the packet. It'll stay with this item as it moves forward. So we appreciate the people who have submitted those comments. Is there any questions for the planning staff from any of our commissioners? Dave?
Mr. Chair, for Mark. Mark, so the conditional zoning, that would be something we'd vote on tonight?
It is something that you could include in the resolution, depending on the applicant's willingness to enter into such a thing. So if there's an indication, if the commission seems that that would be a plausible resolution to some of the issues involving this item, and there's a willingness on the part of the applicant to engage in a conditional zoning agreement, then it can be referenced in an approving resolution that would then be forwarded to City Council. City Council would actually review the document before final adoption of any zoning change.
Okay, so that then we wouldn't be talking RUF, or would it still be an RUF?
It would be a part of it would be attached to the RUF zoning.
Okay, but with conditions that this is, you can only have so many animals, only this type, and that's it, right?
Right, and again, keep in mind that these are conditions that have to be voluntarily offered by the applicant. They cannot be conditions that you impose upon the applicant at their objection.
Okay.
And that is a stipulation of the statute which allows this to occur.
So they would have to offer.
That's correct.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Bonjero. Good questions. Ms. DeNaro?
Mark, is there a precedent, or has this ever happened where we rezone just one parcel in a neighborhood?
It's happened a couple of times over the years that I've been here for various circumstances, sometimes involving nonconformities and addressing issues of nonconformities. I cannot recall a circumstance involving keeping of animals, however. Not to say that it's never happened, but I think in my tenure, which is now closing on 25 years, I cannot recall something like this.
Thank you, Mr. Naro. Any other questions for staff? Mr. Ventura?
Mark, at our study session, we had a discussion that centered around the petitioner may have, by virtue of a prescriptive letter from a counselor, may have a right that supersedes any zoning to keep the chickens that they desire to have, and this was being studied by the law department, and we were going to be guided by that if the law department gave us an opinion prior to tonight's meeting. How has the law department, if they have at all, come down on this?
I have discussed this matter with the law department. They believe that the Morads are doing the right thing by seeking the zoning change, realizing that their claim under the American with Disabilities Act is probably one that could very well be upheld, and hence they believe that their proceeding through this zoning change is the proper course of action to eliminate any zoning nonconformities that may exist. What action would be taken should the zoning not be approved? I can't tell you that. I don't know the answer to that. But the claim under the ADA could be a real one, and the city may have to accept that.
Irregardless of the zoning.
Irregardless of the zoning, that's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Ventura. Any other questions for our staff? If not, our petitioner is in the audience tonight. If you'd like to come forward, we'd like to hear from you. We'll ask that you start with your name and address for our record.
Yeah, my name is Michael Morad. My address is 20180 Westmore.
Thank you, Mr. Morad. And is there anything else that you'd like to add to what's been already said tonight?
No, I think you guys have covered a pretty good part of it as well, but, you know, we are willing to, you know, meet some conditions if necessary, as mentioned before. But, you know, those would have to be discussed, but, I mean, we're more than open to pretty much any conditions with it. We don't have roosters, we don't have any noise, you know, there's no noise early on. They are limited to the outside, so we have an automatic door that opens at 8 o'clock every morning, so they're not out, you know, very early. And that is, you know, just respect to the neighbors and keep the noise down and whatnot. Not that they're very noisy. I know a few of you have stopped by and checked it out, and what you heard is what you heard, and what you smelled is what you smelled. They don't smell. We do follow the GAMPS, which is like a practice from MDARD about manure and things like that, and that's how we clean it out. I do clean it. Coop's cleaned every 2 weeks. It's kept clean. I live there. I like my backyard. It's a big property. I enjoy it. Our son is out there, and our next son will be out there. I don't want him walking in it. We try and keep it as clean as we can and friendly as we can for everybody else. We've had a lot of support from all of our neighbors, people we've never met before, stop by all the time, want to check it out, want to know what's going on, especially since that sign's been out there. But we've had just an outpour of, you know, support from people that live even on the other side of the neighborhood. And they want them, you know, they want to know how it goes because they want them too. And I think they're a good thing. We also, I forgot to mention this last week as well, you know, the waste in our house has gone down. All of our food scraps, they go into a bowl. It's all kept, everything is kept inside of the coop as well. Nothing is put out into the run that's outside. Everything is kept into that coop. That door also closes I adjust it throughout the year depending on when daylight, or when, you know, when the sun goes down. Right now it closes at about 9:30, 9:45. So everything is kept inside. Nothing can get in there. And we keep it that way. I don't want food, I don't want water out there. I don't want to attract any other animals or any other issues. But all of our table scraps, all of our food scraps go right to them, so we've eliminated a lot of our, you know, just waste from our house. We feed them all kinds of different stuff, but, you know, we support the local businesses. I always buy everything from Chaps right at 5 and Middle Belt, and I'll continue to do that for everything that I do around my house too, but especially the feed and all the pine shavings for the bedding and everything else. Try and buy as much as I can from them and support local guys. But again, any of the conditions, if anybody wants to discuss those, we're more than willing. We have 16 right now. I don't see that number going much higher. You know, as they get older, we'll probably, you know, phase new chickens in, so there will be, you know, a couple of more here and there, but I don't see that number ever reaching 20. It was discussed also how many chickens we can keep on an acre. That number's pretty high. We don't ever aim to reach that number, but you know, we're well below the accepted number for keeping chickens on an acre, so but I think that's about it.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Yeah.
Morad. You've given us a lot of information. I think we might have some questions for you.
Yeah.
Let's see if there's any questions from any of the commissioners for our petitioner. Mr. Bonjero.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Moran, I met you the other night, got a chance to see everything. It's nice and neat and clean over there. Explain with 16 chickens, how many eggs can you get? Like when they're really producing, like what's the amount of eggs?
That's dependent on the breed of the chicken as well, but usually it's about, you know, 1 to 2 a day. Could be 3 for some breeds that are really hardy and really produce. During the summer months, right now they're not old enough, we don't get them, but, you know, as the summer goes on, the next couple of weeks, we should start seeing them. But we'll probably see like at minimum one a day from each chicken within the next, you know, little bit, so.
So with that, do you intend on selling them or the extra eggs or?
No, we do not sell. We, you know, hand them out to families, friends, neighbors, pretty much anybody that'll take them, because
Yeah.
we wind up getting overrun with them. We also, as discussed in the meeting last week, it's odd thing, but you cook them down and feed them back to them with the shells as well, because the calcium helps them produce better and you know, larger eggs. So we do that as well once they've reached their shelf life on the, you know, on the counter, but they do last for a very long time. We don't refrigerate them. They last for a very long time on just the counter by themselves, as opposed to the ones that you buy from the store, because they are washed from the store. And when you don't wash them, when they come right out, they have like a protective, there's nothing you can see, but it's like a protective layer that's on them. And as long as you keep that on there, they'll last for like 3 to 4 weeks on a counter.
Gotcha. So I know we talked about like, the neighbor behind us, they have chickens and, I never hear them.
Yeah,
But I do hear a rooster.
yeah,
And it's hilarious. We don't mind it, but he starts about 4:30 in the morning and then
Yeah.
he goes at night and we laugh because
Yeah.
we think I love him. I really
Yeah.
do. But it came up, I asked you if you had any intention of getting a rooster because I could see where that could be annoying to
Yes.
people. But you would never have a rooster.
no, my wife will never allow it either. Her uncle had one, it was not nice. And they can be nice, they cannot be nice, it depends on the rooster and it depends on the people that are around. But, you know, we don't want one, we don't want fertilized eggs, you know, but we don't want one for just safety
Okay.
as well.
So with that, and I'm done, is you would consider Mark's offer of a conditional zoning?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bonjero. Any additional questions?
And if there was anybody that, I don't know who got a chance to stop by or who didn't, I know, you know, like David said, he had stopped by yesterday, but I do have we printed out a picture, I don't know if you guys want to pass it around.
Oh, you can hand it to
You
Ms.
guys can-
Reese and she'll pass it on.
That's just what we have set up right now.
That's helpful, thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Any questions from any other commissioners as that comes around? Thank you. This is your coop, correct?
Yeah, that is the coop and the run, yep.
Okay, thank you.
And that's how it's set up, that's how it'll stay.
Mr. Long?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You mentioned that the door opens automatically at 8 a.m. So I imagine they come out at their leisure.
Yes.
And then it closes automatically at different times depending on daylight. So do you have to go out and corral them back in? Do they know that the doors, is there like a bell that goes off, like a 5-minute bell? How do they know to get back in?
It took a couple of weeks, but we just checked on them at night after I knew that door would close. When we let the dogs out for the last time at night, I would just go out there with a flashlight really quick and check. And we had a few stragglers, but I still check it every night just to make sure that none of them get left out. And then I'll put them back in there if need be. But last 2.5 weeks, haven't had any stragglers outside. So they kind of learn.
So they
It's
learn.
crazy, but they learn where
I get
they learn
it.
where their home is.
I
yeah.
get it. But, so they learn, but you do have a check. So if for some reason you were out of town, what happens? I know there was some correspondence at your old neighborhood where people would keep an eye on them. So what's your plan if you're not around?
Generally, if we're not around, my mother-in-law does stay at our house because we have the dogs, just to keep them at our house because they're fenced in there. They don't have a fence at their house. And generally, if we're gone, she's probably staying with our child. So usually there's somebody there. We don't really plan on taking any long vacations, but or we would have a friend sit over as well to watch the dogs. We don't board our dogs, so they're at the house. But
If we, I guess this is to Mark, if we change the zoning to RUF, his pledge not to have roosters notwithstanding, he could have roosters if it was changed to RUF, is that correct?
Well, any violations of the agreement would be reason
If-
for the zoning to revert back to N2.
So if we had that in the conditions that he couldn't have a rooster, then that would be a violation. But if we just change it to RUF, he could have roosters, is that correct?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Yeah, so if we just made a unilateral change without any conditions, then we're opening the door to that. He may not want them, but the zoning would be changed, the next person might come in and decide that they wanted them, right? So we definitely need safeguards if we're going to,
That would be my suggestion,
yeah,
yes.
okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Long, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Tormina, if we're going to do a conditional rezoning, that occurs at the city council level. That's not something that we'll really noodle out at this stage of the game, because it's the petitioner that has to offer the conditions, such as, I will not have a rooster, I'll only have 20 chickens, or whatever they choose to offer. They will have to offer that to the city council. So at our stage, we won't see those conditions.
You can, if you elected to postpone this, to have those
Okay.
put in writing, to find out what they're in, and have those discussed, that would be at your discretion, right? Otherwise, you could pass that along to council with the recommendation, the suggestion that the conditional zoning agreement be considered as part of this change of zoning with the following items which have been offered by the applicant, so.
Okay, and then that way, at least there's a record that can move on to the council, so they have an idea
Correct.
what we're looking for.
Correct.
Okay, Mr. Long?
Okay, well, that's certainly one way to go. I guess another question would be then also if we denied it, the petitioner would have 10 days to appeal to city council, and they could come up with the regulations that they're willing to submit to as part of their
Well, yeah,
appeal.
because this is a zoning change, it automatically goes to council. So there would be no need, regardless of what your decision is tonight, it's going to automatically go to council for a public hearing,
Okay,
a second public hearing.
okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Long, and I think those discussions are helpful for the folks in our audience as well to have a feel for how this is going to proceed. We are a recommending body. We're going to make a recommendation of this zoning, either for or against, which will then go on to city council. So you're going to go through this whole process again of a public hearing and a vote at the council level as well. So you understand as a petitioner, and also anyone in the audience who's following this item. Any other questions, Ms. DeNaro?
Mark, this is probably for you. If we do conditional rezoning, could we make it so it doesn't run with the land? It reverts back after the sale of the property?
You cannot do that. He can offer that, and you can accept it.
Got it.
All right, thank you for that question. Any other questions for our petitioner or our staff? Mr. Ventura?
So, I'm gonna try not to beat this to death, but it appears to me, and Mark, and I'm saying this to you.
Yeah.
But it appears to me, and Mark, I'd like you to chime in here, that you have not come to us tonight with a petition with conditions, number one. Number two, we are precluded from offering conditions to you. We just can't sit here and say, we're going to approve this with the following conditions. That's not within our power. So we're in a position where we can deny you tonight, and you can then go to the city council, because you're automatically going to go there with conditions that you would offer to them. Or we could do something called tabling this tonight. You could then consult with Mr. Tormina and the planning staff to come up with the conditions that you would be willing to live with, and then you'd come back to us in a week or two, and we would then have the opportunity to approve you with the conditions that you had worked out with Mr. Tormina and the planning staff. So, have I said anything wrong, Mark?
No,
Okay. So, I guess, what would you like us to do tonight? If a straight-out approval is not,
Yeah, so we would have to have the conditions met, like written out for you guys, correct? It can't just be like,
It would have to be part of our documentation and
Yeah,
offered to
so-
us by you
Yeah.
as part of your petition.
okay. Yeah, I'd like to do that.
So you
table
would
it.
prefer that we table tonight, give you an opportunity to do the conditions, and then come back to us? Is that what you're telling me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wilshaw.
Thank you, Mr. Ventura. Mr. Long?
Just wanted to make sure, that's fine, we can do it the way that you agreed to with Mr. Ventura. That will slow the process down, as long as you're okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, if that gives us the greater,
I mean,
odds
you
and,
can,
know,
that way
I
you
mean,
can
we
have a yes recommendation, potentially have a yes recommendation from
Yeah.
us. But either way, city council will still have the
they're the
final word.
ultimate.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's fine. I understand that, but yeah, that's totally fine.
Okay, thank you.
I would make some joke about getting his ducks in a row, but that's not appropriate.
Or that shirt.
Any other questions from any of the commissioners?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Caremagna?
So, Pete and Glenn, I heard what you said, and it seems logical to go that route, no doubt about it. What also seems logical and reasonable to me would be, you have a split decision in the neighborhood, it sounds like there. You've got 7 or 8 for you, 7 or 8 against you. I think you should go back to those neighbors and come up with an understanding that maybe you can swing a few more that don't oppose you. This is a good opportunity to have a conversation and say, listen, I'm not trying to build a zoo here. I'm trying to keep 15, 16 chickens.
Yep.
And nothing else, no llamas, no cows, no goats. And, you might have neighbors with dogs that are gonna be barking at these chickens all night long. There might be more to the story here that you can do to appease some of your neighbors and have a friendly resolution for this. And then again, maybe not at all. But I think it's a good opportunity, even the ones you don't like and that don't like you, try to have a conversation, a civil conversation. Maybe you come to some agreement.
I just have one, how do do I get the letters that were sent in to you guys? Or how do I,
They are public record.
because I have no idea who sent letters, who did. I mean,
It's all public record. We can get you that.
you guys can get us, okay.
So,
And then, so my only other question is regarding the letter from my wife, which we had discussed last week.
You can talk about it.
Since, which, yeah, obviously she's fine with. I obviously have done a lot of research on this before doing this, and I've read of other cities doing this as well, and other people going through this, and I think it was Sam that said it, and actually I remember it was Peter. You guys had said, well, this letter basically covers you, but couldn't really get a straight answer. Is that, so if this all gets denied, does that letter cover us, or are we just gonna be kind of poked by the city, or is that just we're not gonna answer that kind of deal?
I'll try to answer that as best I can. I'm not a lawyer by any means.
I get it. I know, like I said, I had talked to,
So
I
this
had
is
talked
not
to Mike
legal
a few
advice
times, yeah.
by any stretch of the imagination. But if the city was to deny this process all the way through. You go through city council and you get denied. What we've heard is that you may have an opportunity to, under the Americans with Disabilities Act, to have a valid case.
Yep.
In which case, my understanding is then you would essentially have to sue the city. Am I correct, Mr. Tormina, in saying that he's gonna need some sort of a judgment to say, hey, we've looked at this and this is in fact a valid ADA situation, or is it that it's just something that the city accepts as a ADA exception? I don't know exactly how that,
I'm not sure that I can predict what would occur under those circumstances. It could be either. I mean, if the city continues its course of enforcement on this,
right, to violate it.
then it could very well result in some type of claim against the city or whatever, litigation. If, on the other hand, the city chooses not to, with the belief that that they do have a valid claim, then maybe it rests there.
Right.
So.
So, yeah, so I guess an analogy would be a person who puts a structure in front of their house for a ramp for a wheelchair, and the city says, well, you can't do that. That's a violation of some sort of building code or something. And then they come back and say, well, I have this medical condition that says I need a wheelchair and ADA protects me. And the city says, okay, we accept that. And then the issue becomes moot at that stage. It's kind of a similar situation, is it not?
Yeah, I would offer the fact that when it comes to certain, from structures, it's probably more black and white than that. As far as the ADA and what's allowed, this is probably a more of a gray area.
Right.
But yes, there are analogies there.
Okay. So not a great answer for you. It's not a clear answer, I guess, but that's the best I can do for you.
No, I appreciate it. And like I said, I've talked to a lot of people about it. I've also, I've reached out to the Emotional Support Animals of America, talked to them, and figured out what I need to do with them as well, because they help, support people like me in these cases. And I did talk to them a lot about it for quite a while. So all we would, and I would have to register with them, and they would as well, back us and support, the owners and people who have them registered and whatnot, so.
Yeah, I would think it's at least safe to say that the evaluation of the medical necessity and the ADA aspect of this is not it's not a point that lies with us. It's not for us to decide, and it's probably not for the council to decide. It's more in the enforcement end of things, and that's really, that's where it's gonna. That's
basically.
That's who's gonna have to eventually make the decision.
Yeah, we just didn't wanna be, having a knock on the door every week about it. Oh, you're not allowed to have these. Oh.
Exactly.
This says
Yeah.
otherwise.
Yeah, here's my piece of paper.
Okay, see you next week, Dan.
Yeah.
Because
Exactly.
I've dealt with Dan at zoning quite a lot already, so I know that.
Well,
But
we
I
understand.
But, I just didn't want to have to deal with that. That's why we're here. We're just going through our processes and doing what we got to do.
And we appreciate the fact that you're going through the process.
Yeah, doing what we got to do, and,
Yep.
we just want to do our thing on our property.
Totally understand.
So-
Is there any other questions?
I have one more question.
Monroe?
Mark, if this does get denied, wouldn't the next course of action be to get a variance from the zoning board?
If the council denied it, the Marads could choose to go to the zoning board of appeals and seek a use variance. So that would be up to them. We cannot force them to file that a request for a use
Yeah.
variance.
No, excellent question, Mr. Naro. That lets you know that there are certainly at this point still many paths that this can go toward denials, toward approvals, and so on. And
Definitely.
we'll see where things go as we continue on. So that's a good point to bring up. Any other questions, comments from any of our commissioners before I go to the audience? I think we've exhausted our questions up here. Mr. Moran, if you would like to take a seat for just a moment, I'll see if there's anyone else in the audience wishing to speak for or against this item.
Okay,
If
thank
there
you.
is anyone, please come forward to our podium. We got a couple of folks coming forward. Good evening, ma'am. Again, we'll ask you to start with your name and address.
Okay, my name is Pauline Schatz. My address is 33233 Norfolk Street. I am across the street from them. I don't hear the chickens. I've been in their yard. I get migraines, so all smells, all sounds are very excruciating for me. And I've not ever smelled the chickens, even when I'm back at the coop. So they've opened the coop, the chickens have come out, and I've not smelled anything. I also would be willing to check on the chickens if they were out of town, and their dogs. So I'm right across the street. I'm married, so my husband and I would take care of helping them with those things. And we don't have any issue. They've done a lot of improvements in the house, on the yard. Everything looks great. It's at the very back of the lot. It's like not interfering with anything. So I'm not sure why we're having a meeting, but, you know, it's just, I know we have to do those things. But there's not a problem, actually. I don't know why we're here.
All right.
Okay,
I appreciate your comments.
thank you.
Thank you for speaking. Anyone else wishing to speak, please come forward. Good evening, ma'am.
I'm Teresa Fredericks. I live at 33333 Norfolk, right across the street and right next to, this woman is our condominium, Pine Brook condominium. We have 7 units there, and many of the neighbors, like Mike and Megan, I believe they moved in about 2 years ago, a year ago, and I met them. People like them, but I would urge you to deny this because we are concerned about vermin and wildlife. And I have personally seen rats, not in the last 3 or 4 years, but I one time saw a rat walking right across the street in front of her house toward their property. They didn't live there then. And another time I saw a rat right nearby, within about 20 feet. We haven't seen rats. I haven't seen any rats lately, and I haven't heard of any. But we have had a constant battle. I've lived there 26 years, since 1996, when they were built. We've had a constant battle with raccoons, have cost us a lot of money to rebuild our roofs, to clean out our attics and reinstall installation. We have animals around there. We had foxes breeding in the back of our property. We have deer, they're eating things. We don't need any more wildlife in the area, and we're concerned that it will just attract more animals to the area, and we don't need any more. Another thing we're concerned about is that if it's rezoned, is it going to be limited to chickens? I think under the law, they could have goats or whatever. We definitely, if they are allowed to have anything, we need restrictions. Also, if the property is transferred, how do we know if the new owner isn't going to bring in goats or whatever? It's a residential area. It's really a nice area of different homes. There's one block down from us that has, it's a beautiful block to walk along. The whole area is residential except for the medical complex that is just to the west of them. So it's definitely just a residential area. And I would ask that you deny it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else in our audience wishing to speak to this item? Gentlemen, please come forward. You can go ahead. Go ahead. You can line up if you wish to make things faster.
Okay.
It's okay. Good evening, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Laura Socana, and I live at 36055 Ladywood Street. And you probably want to know why someone on Ladywood would be concerned on Norfolk. A couple of reasons. They're my children. I am the mother-in-law, and there's a couple things. I would be there. We've had chickens before. We've had chickens in Livonia. My family been here in Livonia since 1966. Went back and forth on Norfolk to Tyler School for 7 kids. So I'm quite aware of the whole area, and I'm quite aware of the animals that would be attracted that she's saying rats. Well, you can't control rats when you have a restaurant. So she needs to be concerned in some other areas, first of all. Secondly, the raccoons, the deer, whatever comes in, we are in progress. I grew up at Gill before Gill was even Gill. Timothy King was found there, okay?
Correct.
So, as far as these two, they take care of their yard, they take care of their children, their future children, because I'm gonna be having another one. And I'm there quite frequently. So, I just have to say, they are progress in that area. They're making it nice and clean. The only thing that's there right now would be the commercial, would be from the office buildings to north, to 8 Mile. Everything is residential, yes, but it could very well be rural. And I do have to say that people need to listen and people need to not make judgments. And as far as the ADA is concerned, it's very real. And as I'm sitting back here and I'm seeing head shake, don't make that judgment until they know. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else wishing to speak? Please come forward. Gentlemen,
How are you? How is everyone?
good evening.
I'm actually a Westland native, but I've known Megan and Mike Morad for about 10 years now.
Okay, can we get your name and address?
Yeah, it's Anthony Tiberia, and
Okay.
it's 36876 Ravenwood Drive.
Excellent, thank you.
Like I said, I've known them for about 10 years or so, before chickens and after chickens at both residences. They do a very good job, not only with the way that they keep the chickens, how they maintain them, as well as their property. You know, their goal has always been to have this type of land to be able to do these types of things. They bought a property that did need lots of work, and it didn't have the greatest curb appeal. They've done a very good job, not only adding to the home's value, but also the subdivision value that they're actually in. There's more than just how it's zoned. You want good neighbors like them to be able to take care of their property, maintain it, and provide value, even added value for their homes as well. They do a very good job. They're very responsible people. If he tells you that he's gonna set conditions with you, he's gonna stick to them. You're not gonna have to go back and visit to fine or assess again. Just like to say that about it. They've done a very good job with the property currently. There's many overgrown bushes, trees, everything. You couldn't even see the house. And like I said, it's really added value. And if you guys do come to an agreement, maybe table it for another time, they have no problem meeting the conditions that you either suggest or they come to terms with. Thank you.
Great, thank you for speaking. And another gentleman's coming behind you. Good evening, sir.
Ron Urban, 20181 Shady Side. Yes, there's always been a restaurant there and there's always been some kind of rats. But we did have an incident where another neighbor down the street did have rats, or had chickens, and the place was loaded with rats and the city ended up coming in and shutting them down. So yes, will be rats, there will be raccoons, but this is going to increase the numbers. And as far as the smell and stuff like that, I know it all depends on the wind, but it will be there. And I bought property in the city. I didn't buy it in farmland. So my vote would be for a denial. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Urban. Any other folks wishing to speak for or against this item? Feel free to come forward. Good evening, Ms. Moran.
Hi, Megan Morad, 20180 Westmore Street. I know that the rats have been brought up. There are a lot of things that chickens are rumored to do, but they kill rats. There are farms that have chickens strictly for that problem. And I have seen firsthand what these chickens will do to not only rats, but raccoons, chipmunks, and squirrels. The whole reason why we started with this chicken venture in our old home was because I do suffer from a mental illness. And it was suggested that I try coming back to nature to help what the medication can't compensate for. And it has helped me. It has helped me not only have a routine and have more respect for the people and the wildlife around me, but it's also helped my family and I come together. And not just my husband and my son. We've got family from 10 years ago that, friends. We learn new things every day about how the circle of life happens, and it just teaches us that you need to be respectful for one another. And yeah, you can be worried about the rats, you can be worried about the animals that come. Chickens aren't gonna affect raccoons or foxes or deer that have been there longer than we have. But what the chickens will do is make sure that the rats stay away. Now I know Ron mentioned that there was a gentleman further down the block that had them, and it posed a problem because they were bringing rats in. A little more history on that. He let them free range. They were in and out of the garage. 3 houses down, there was another gentleman who had turkeys. In between those houses was a woman who fed squirrels. We do not plan on ever letting those chickens out of that coop, out of that run. Like my husband said, we love our yard and we like to enjoy it. We also have an unorthodox hobby that happens to help me find peace in life. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Appreciate your comments, Ms. Moran. Is there a gentleman wishing to speak? Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Paul Vanderplow, 20095 Shady Side. First, sir, Mr. Murad, thank you for being educated. It was a very well-done presentation. And while this kills me to even insinuate that we should be able to tell people what they should do or not do on their own property, the only thing I guess I had questions with were some of the open-ended statements of, we don't see ourselves going above 16. We don't see this. Quite frankly, if he is educated as he is and responsible as he is, that's great. I've been around long enough and I've worked in enough cities to where, unfortunately, the next owner or something kind of creeps out of way and now we don't have 16, we have 100. I'm not saying he will do that. I'm not saying he even insinuated that. But unfortunately, I've been in too many properties where it started out with good intentions and then it flies, no pun intended, it flies out of control. So if it was me and against her, I never want to say what you can and can't do on your own property. But in this kind of setting, in the neighborhood, there would almost, I would think it would be a lot more plausible if there were some restrictions on it to where those open-ended statements are closed. To where it isn't, I only plan on doing 16 and it becomes something else. So for me, I'd just like to hear a little more tighter control on it. And again, not for Mr. Murad, but anything in the future, so it doesn't balloon out of control. But thank you for hearing me. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your comments. We appreciate that. Anyone else wishing to speak on this item? There's one more person coming. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Maria Stanulet, and I reside at 20055 Shady Side Street. And I want to say that a lot of the neighbors in that area do have a lot of land. And we can all petition the council to raise animals and have our area rezoned, like Mike did. We live in more than half an acre. All my next door neighbors have half an acre. Across the street, they all have 1 acre. If we all decide to do that in the middle of a city and start raising animals, what will this turn into? My neighbor did that. I'm going to go and I'm going to do that because we live in a residential area. Like somebody said, we bought our homes in the city. If we wanted to live out there in the land, in the farm, I would have bought my home in the farm. So even though the chickens are restrained, and he said 16 chickens, maybe 20, they give on an average of what? 1 or 2 eggs a day. Let's say 25 eggs a day times 7 days a week divided by 12, you get like 15,000 eggs, and he's not planning on selling. That's a lot of eggs to give your family, and that's your problem, what you do with the eggs, definitely. And I do worry about rats and raccoons and groundhogs, because I have seen big holes in my yard, and I do not know where they're from. We try to, maybe they could be possums, they could be raccoons. I don't know what the holes are, and I'm trying to find out what they are. With chickens and their poop, and he said he cleans them every 2 weeks. I am afraid cleaning them every 2 weeks, 16 chickens, 20 chickens, that's a lot of trash. So obviously we are probably gonna have some extra animals that are gonna migrate into other people's yards, into other people's trash cans. Even though they're covered, raccoons are notorious for taking covers out. Rats do the same thing, and I just don't want to see a city area turn into something like a farmland. And I understand it is for your mental health. I understand that. But I also am concerned about what's going to happen with the neighborhood if a rezoning is possible. Other neighbors might come around and ask for rezoning also, and we don't want, maybe it might not happen, but that can happen, not now, maybe 3 years from now, 5 years from now, and that's my concern.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you for your comments.
Sure.
Anyone else wishing to speak for or against this item? I don't see anyone else wishing to speak for or against this item. Mr. Murad, is there anything else that you would like to state before we make our decision? I always like to give the petitioner the final word. Again, we don't want to, I just want to preface it by saying we don't want to engage in debate between things, but if you want to address anything that was brought up, feel free, just don't personalize it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I see where everybody's coming from, and I understand it, but I have cameras up. They go off if anything comes near it. They've been out there for 2-3 months. I've yet to have any incident with animals. And again, the one down the street, that was probably more of a hoarder's situation that was going on than a actual what we're doing. I understand it, that people are worried about, other things, but there are other houses in our neighborhood that are zoned RUF already. They have stopped by. They have chickens. They're already in the neighborhood. Whether or not everybody back here knows that, they're there. That's how quiet they can be. That's how discreet they can be. They might not have as many. I know of somebody else that has 10. He's on, again, other side of the neighborhood, but they are zoned that way. They have them. And even in, like I said, where we used to live, Plymouth and Inkster, there was a few houses over there zoned RUF that had them as well. And there were others that were not zoned RUF. We take pride in what we do with everything, and I think that about covers it. But we try and keep up on them as much as we can. And I understand where everybody's coming from, but everybody in life has different goals, and fortunately, I can't live where I want to live, an hour and a half away from work, but,
Understood.
But, things happen and life's got to go on, but I think that's about it.
Thank you, Mr. Murad. Is there any other questions from any of the commissioners of our petitioner before we make our decision? I just want to give one more opportunity in case any issues were brought up. I don't see any questions from any of our commissioners, so thank you for coming this evening. I'm going to close the public hearing. You can go ahead and have a seat, and a motion would be in order from our commission.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Ventura.
I'm going to offer a motion to table this tonight to give the petitioner an opportunity to come back to the Planning Commission with a conditional zoning request that would put in place many of the limitations that the folks in the audience think would be appropriate.
And you would like to table that to a date certain of our next meeting?
Yes.
Would that be sufficient? Okay. And Mr. Murad, do you think that that would give you sufficient time to work with our planning department to just table you to our next meeting?
What was the date?
July 11th.
July 11th?
Yeah, that'd be perfect.
Okay, that would give you sufficient time. So we're looking to table this meeting to July 11th, which is a petition or a proposal made by Mr. Ventura. Is there support for that?
Support.
Support by Mr. Bonjero. We have a motion to table on the floor. There is no discussion on motions to table. If the secretary is ready, please call the roll.
Mr. Ventura.
Aye.
Mr. Bonjero.
Aye.
Ms. DeNaro.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
No.
Chair Magno votes aye. Chairman Wilshaw.
Votes aye. Motion passes. This item has been tabled to the meeting of July 11th. Please get in touch with our planning staff, and they can work with you and on that those conditions.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for coming.
Time.
Thank you and everyone else for coming tonight on this item. And if you want to follow along, you can come back on July 11th. And next we have item number 2.
Item 2 is petition 2023-05-02-04 submitted by the Axe Parlor, requesting waiver use approval pursuant to section 6.09 of the Livonia zoning ordinance as amended to operate an on-premises tasting room permit in conjunction with microbrewer license to allow the sale and consumption of beer at 30959 5 Mile Road located within the Livonia Plaza Shopping Center on the south side of 5 Mile Road between Henry Ruff and Merriman Roads in the northwest quarter of section 23.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Mr. Tormina?
Thank you. This request is to allow beer consumption in connection with a new indoor recreational use called the Axe Parlor. This business is in the Livonia Plaza Shopping Center, which is on the south side of 5 Mile Road between Henry Ruff and Merriman. The plaza contains a total of approximately 133,000 square feet of retail space divided into 20 tenants. The plaza is anchored by a Kroger grocery store as well as a TJ Maxx. The zoning is C2 general business and P parking. The Axe Parlor is a Target axe throwing venue, for lack of a better description. It's located near the center of the shopping center, adjacent to the TJ Maxx. The unit measures approximately 5,000 square feet. A floor plan submitted with the application shows the layout of the unit. It has 6 axe throwing lanes. Each contains a table and 4 chairs for viewing. There's a folding area, a lounge with a small dry bar, 4 bar stools, and then additional seating for 20 persons. There are 2 restrooms and then some back of the house operations, a work area. The Axe Parlor is requesting to offer beer for on-site consumption. A licensed microbrewer called Red Rocker Brewing Company in Canton, Michigan is the manufacturer and would be the distributor of the beer, which would be available at the Axe Parlor. Red Rocker proposes self-distributing the beer that it manufactures to Axe Parlor customers. Patrons would order the beer directly from Red Rocker, which would provide delivery, identification verification, and then a point of sales. The delivery services would be done by a Red Rocker employee who would be stationed in a vehicle off the premises. This unique method of serving customers regularly is not addressed in the city's zoning regulations. In a C2 district, brewers, microbrewers, brew pubs, and distilleries are treated as a waiver use under section 6.09 of the zoning ordinance. Initially, it was thought that Red Rocker would utilize an on-premise tasting room permit as an extension of its existing microbrew license to serve beer at the Axe Parlor. However, the Michigan Liquor Control Commission, or the MLCC, only allows microbrewers to operate tasting rooms in conjunction with and in the same premises where on-site manufacturing is conducted, which is not the case with the Axe Parlor. So, in other words, if a microbrewer manufactures beer and has a tasting room permit, they can either have that tasting room permit located in the establishment where they have their main brewing operations. If they want to operate a tasting room permit elsewhere, they also have to conduct manufacturing operations at that location. They're not allowed to have just a tasting room. There are some types of licenses that allow that to occur. It is not in a situation with microbrewers. Self-distributing alcohol in a manner proposed by the Axe Parlor and Red Rocker is not something that the city has ever dealt with. Livonia Police Department has not completed its review of this petition. Special Investigator Ronayne has been communicating with the Michigan Liquor Control Commission to determine what, if any, additional license or permit might be needed to self-distribute and consume alcohol using the method proposed by the petitioner. Questions remain, and since the Livonia Police Department has not provided the commission with a recommendation, staff believes that this item should be tabled until they can provide one. With that, Mr. Chairman, I will read out the items of correspondence.
Yes, please.
We have a letter from the Office of the Treasurer indicating that they have no objection to the proposal as submitted. That letter is signed by Linda Shield and dated May 31st. We have a letter dated May 19th from Department of Finance, signed by Connie Cumpula, also indicating that they have no objections to the petition. A letter from the Inspection Department dated June 1st and signed by Jerome Hanna with no objections. A letter from the Traffic Bureau dated May 24th and signed by Paul Walters, Sergeant, indicating no objections. Another letter of no objection coming from the Fire Marshal dated May 18th and signed by Brian Kukla. And that is the extent of the correspondence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tormina. Any questions for our planning staff? Mr. Long?
Thank you. Mr. Tormina, do we have a timetable on when the police expect to opine on this?
I do not. I spoke with Mr. Ronayne this evening, and he is still looking into this. He has some concerns. He has discussed this with several persons at the MLCC, trying to resolve exactly what can be done here, what is allowed under their licensing rules and regulations. But that notwithstanding, I think what he would like to hear this evening is precisely how the operation would occur. I think he wants to get as much information as he can before he does render an opinion. And he also has to consult with the chief of police on this matter as well.
If we were to approve or deny this tonight, would, I mean, it would still, again, go on to council, or it could be.
Correct.
And so the police department would still have the ability, I mean, it would be accelerated, but they still would have time in order to do their study before it went to council.
He did not indicate how much time he needed. I will say that. He did express his concerns clearly. But if this should move on, if this should move forward with an approving resolution, it would provide roughly 2 weeks of time for him to provide that analysis. If on the other hand it was denied and a petitioner chose to file an appeal, that would provide well over a month, probably between now and the time that public hearing would be set on the appeal.
Okay, so I'm sure we're gonna get the chance to hear from the petitioner and we can find out. I know that other similar places have the ability to sell beer and wine, and I wanna know how this could adversely affect their business, or if they will be able to wait it out. The second question that I have is, well, I applaud the creativity that's gone into this in order to try to get to a spot where they can find a way to deliver beer to their customers. I also worry about the precedent it sets. And is there a way, if we were to approve this, is there a way for us to sunset the permit? In other words, in the write-up it says that they've, or in the supplement that they provided, it says that they're working with attorneys in order to get a permanent license, but they expect that to take 6 months to a year. So could we, if we approve this, could we put a sunset on this of 1.5 years or 2 years, so that if they can't get their liquor license in that point, we're not just creating a full-time workaround, I guess.
You can, under the ordinance allows you to impose conditions, reasonable conditions on the granting of a waiver. The length of time is subject to another, you know, that's another discussion. You know,
Sure.
6 months to a year, you know, that 6 months should be more than an adequate time to secure a license. You know, we've done hundreds of these over the years, and we're aware that, you know, it can be done within that time frame. So a year and a half would seem excessive.
Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Any other questions for our planning staff?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Bonjero?
Mark, so the investigation, he's looking into this, it's kind of like a third party coming there and providing the beer, right? So what's he investigating? I guess I missed last week's study, so I'm catching up.
Well, the first thing he needs to establish is whether or not they're set up with the proper licenses and permits in order to do the self-distributing in the manner in which they're proposing. He has not been able to receive confirmation from the Michigan Liquor Control Commission that Red Rocker has the authority to do what they're proposing. So that's number one, I would say. And then number two is what does the police think about this? You know, somebody sitting in a truck in the back of a business with refrigerated beer and people using an app or however they're going to purchase beer and having somebody come in, back a house, serve them the beer and check, you know, ID verification and all those things. It's like I indicated, it's not done anywhere that I'm not on a regular basis.
There's no control, right? Yeah.
It's just, you know, the police want that control. They want to understand everything about the operation, I would suspect, before they want to render,
Okay,
you know, an opinion
I
and
understand.
a recommendation.
Gotcha, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bonjero. Any other questions for our staff? If not, the petitioner is in the audience, so feel free to come forward to our podium. I'll ask that you start with your name and address.
Yeah, Eric Schubert, 25753 Pondview Drive. It's actually New Boston, not Livonia.
Okay,
Alden Wong, 31550 Stamen Circle, Farmington Hills.
okay. And you're representing both Red Rocker and the X-Parlor,
Yes,
respectively?
Red Rocker, Expert.
And yeah, I'm co-owner of Axe Parlor.
Okay. Is there anything else that you would like to add from what you've heard so far tonight?
I'd just like to say that Mr. Bonjero just mentioned about the control and the security. What we're proposing is not a BYOB. They cannot bring anything on site. They cannot take anything off site. Everything will be controlled and cannot leave. It has to be consumed at that facility within, and I see everybody has the drawings. On the first page, you'll see the yellow lines. It has to be consumed just within those yellow lines. It cannot go to the bathroom, across the line into the axe lanes, and it cannot leave the back or front door of the property. And that is, our job is actually not only to deliver the beer, but we are also trained to make sure that somebody's not overserved. If somebody is clearly intoxicated, they're cut off, and we'd handle that. And we also are the ones responsible for monitoring, making sure nothing leaves that site as well. There'll be signs, there'll be us at the back, there'll be management at the front that'll make sure that nobody is taking any undrank product out of the building. We're also keeping it very simple. It's just cans, at the very most, 2 types of beer. It's gonna be a very, very simple, controlled operation. And I understand Mr. Cormino said that, you know, nobody's done this before, but it actually is able to be done, even though it is very unique and you know, hasn't been approached before.
All right, thank you, I appreciate that. Is there anything that, from the Axe Parlor's perspective, that you would like to add?
Yeah, just regarding us obtaining the liquor license, that was just an estimate on our part, 6 months to a year. We've never applied for a liquor license before, so we're not exactly sure what the timeline is, but we're definitely willing to accept conditions if it ends up being a year. But I agree, you know, a year and a half is excessive, and we definitely expect to have our liquor license by then.
Okay, I appreciate that comment.
And just to announce, or to also make the comment,
Sure.
Conditions are absolutely, you know, fine with us too. We understand that this is a stopgap process. And, putting a sunset timeline on that is not a problem. Limiting the, number of types of beer that can be served there, it's not an issue. Those conditions are absolutely understandable, and we're on board with those as well.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Schubert. Is there any questions from any of our commissioners for our petitioners? Ms. Tenero?
So can you tell me a little bit about your competitors? Do they have bars? Is this normal in, the axe throwing places? And if this is denied and you can't have the stopgap, will you be able to stay open?
Yeah, I can speak on that. All of our competitors in the area, there are two in Novi, the Hub Stadium and Battle Axe. They both have full bars there. Detroit Axe has 3 locations in the Metro Detroit area. They all have full bars. Legendary Axe in Westland has a full bar. So it is kind of the norm rather than the exception to have alcohol. And so your second question, that our customers' number one question right now, we get asked all the time, when are you guys going to have alcohol? So it would definitely impact our business if we don't have this stopgap, and that's why we're looking into collaborating with Red Rocker in the meantime.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nero. Mr. Long?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just satisfy my curiosity. If it's I'm trying to understand the restrictions on the yellow line. I certainly understand why you don't want it in the axe lanes. I'm just curious, why isn't it allowed in the bathrooms? What prohibits that? Or is that just something that you're choosing because you don't want the mess or something?
I think, I'm not even.
That's not Red Rocker regulation.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I think just the business partners, they had proposed that to not have it in the bathrooms. I don't know if it's because, yeah, obviously the cameras aren't there, so I don't know if there would be minors in the bathroom consuming. That's probably the biggest issue, is not knowing who is in the bathroom consuming the alcohol.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Any other questions for our petitioner? I don't see any other.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I got a couple questions.
Go for it.
So if you have a customer that comes in, say I come in there and I'm bringing a party with me and I want to order a case of Red Rocker beer. I buy it from you on the app, you bring in 24 beers. How do you regulate who's drinking those? And whose responsibility is it to regulate? Is it the Axe Parlor, or is it Red Rocker to be responsible for who's drinking that?
It's going to be our responsibility to actually deliver it, and we do not intend on delivering a case of beer. That's not the case. If there's 24 people in there, that's not a problem. We'll deliver 24 beers. But if there's 4 people in there, we're not going to allow a case of beer to be sold. It's just going to have to be done on maybe a 2 per person. And that way we are able to monitor, who's drinking, how they're drinking. And if they are in a small group or a large group, I should say, and there is underage people, that's got to be taken into consideration as well. Like, if there's 1 adult and 3 kids and he orders 4 beers, we're not going to allow that. We know what possibly could happen. On top of that, the Axe Parlor's management and crew will be there as well. So it's a combination that they're going to watch, we're going to watch, and make sure that this is done in a safe and legal manner.
Okay, what kind of hours are you talking about? Is this going to be a 7-day operation? Is it noon till midnight? Is it only on Fridays and Saturdays? What's the proposal?
Yeah, the Axe Parlor is open 5 days a week, Wednesday through Sunday, and I'm assuming Red Rocker is going to be there during all of our business hours.
Yeah, what's the close time, I believe, is 10, 11 o'clock? Or?
Wednesday and Thursday, we close at 10, Friday, Saturday at 11, Sunday at 9.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not going to have bar hours. It's normal restricted hours.
How long has the Axe Parlor been in business?
We opened May 6th, so just over a month.
How is business?
In the summer, it's our slow season, so it's kind of hit or miss, but being brand new, we've been doing okay so far.
And how aggressive are you at going after your own personal Axe Parlor liquor license? Where are you at in that process?
We have spoken to an attorney, so the process has begun as of June 2nd. So very early stages.
Okay. As far as the Red Rocker, where else are you peddling beer? What other locations do you peddle beer out of your truck?
Yeah, we self-distribute to bars, restaurants, as well as individuals. We're at about 80 locations across southeast Michigan. We have customers ranging from Grand Rapids up to Flint, Saginaw, and all around the Detroit area that we deliver to as well.
You deliver to liquor stores, party stores? Where else do you sell liquor out of the truck? What other locations do you do that in around the?
Yeah, it's beer, not liquor. But we,
Beer, I'm sorry, beer.
No problem. We deliver to a lot of restaurants in the area, a lot of bars in the area, only a handful of party stores in the area. And then, of course, the individual users, we deliver a lot to their homes, and that's standard and legal up to 2,000 barrels a year. We're able to self-distribute, and we are below that limit right now, way below.
I understand that you distribute, but where do you do direct sales to a facility that's for consumption? Where do you do that at?
Well, the Belleville Yacht Club is one of the ones we do. That is a club that we deliver to, and we do deliver to individuals that order right from the yacht club. On top of that, they have a license to resell, so we deliver to them to resell to boaters that go out on their boats on the weekends.
Okay, so you have a truck that parks there at the Belleville Yacht Club and all day and just sells, or whatever their hours are, and you sell right to?
We don't do that direct out of the truck. No, we have a truck available that delivers as needed. So if they call us and they say we're out, we're right there within a matter of a couple hours to deliver more.
Okay, so this is a first venture for you to sell directly to a consumer?
To have a truck sitting, yes, yep.
Okay.
Yep, but it's the same premise, it's the same self-distribution premise. It's just not that we're, driving around making the deliveries. We're sitting there waiting, and when the orders come in, we take them right inside.
Okay.
Same method, though.
Where would you propose parking that truck, van, whatever you've got? Where would you propose parking that behind the Axe Parlor? Because the reason I ask is it's loaded with government army cars back there.
Yep.
Where would you park that truck at?
If you look, there's a yellow kind of lined off area that's right out their back door. And that is their loading dock area. That's secure for them. It's not taking up a parking spot. And we have a very small minivan, and that's where we would park it right there, only during hours that it's open. Once it's closed, we're out of there. We're not there until it reopens. So it's only there during hours, and they have a spot that will not take up any parking spots. It's right down there.
That's the questions I've got. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Caremagno. Any additional questions for our petitioner? I don't see any additional questions. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak for or against this item?
I just want to make one other comment too. I did reach out to the police inspector as well today, and we're very happy to talk and walk through this with him on an expedited matter to answer any questions he might have.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Is there anyone wishing to speak for or against this item? I don't see anyone else coming forward. We'll give you, again, the last word. Is there anything else that you guys would like to say before we make our decision?
No, but just I would appreciate your guys' understanding and the fact that we're trying to make sure that these, the Axe Parlor can survive over the next 6 or 11 months or 12 months, however long it might take to get their liquor license. This is not a permanent long-term thing. This just is going to allow them to keep their customers, keep growing their base while they're going through that lengthy process. We went through it as well, and it takes a lot longer than you think. And it's very tough for some businesses to be able to ride that out. So we hope to be able to work with them and work with the city to make this happen on their behalf.
All right, thank you. I do have one question I'm going to ask, as I'm just because it just came to my mind. Looking at the pictures of the facility, there are counters, essentially, or seats, if you will, seated counters behind each of the throwing lanes. And you have a yellow line essentially going through the middle of that.
Correct.
Which implies a person sitting there at the counter can drink. A person who's in the throwing lane area on the other side of the counter can't.
That's correct. Yeah, it's common for people to try to drink from that side after they throw an axe. They might want to grab a beer and have a drink, but we're gonna refrain from doing that just for safety reasons. We want alcohol on just the seating side of the table.
Okay, so and that's exactly where I was leading to, is how are you gonna enforce that? So you're gonna have a person in that area that's gonna say, hey, you need to sit down if you're gonna drink?
Yeah, each lane will be manned by an axe master who supervises the axe throwing, and they make sure that no one's gonna be drinking any type of liquid while in the throwing arena.
Okay. The reason I ask that is because I know at bowling alleys, it's kind of a similar layout in the sense of a counter usually behind bowling lanes, and they don't want you to have any drinks in the bowling lane area, obviously, because they don't want spills.
Yes, exactly.
But people obviously reach over the counter and grab their drinks, so I was curious how you're going to enforce that, so.
Yeah, like I said, we have an axe master supervising each group.
Okay, excellent, I appreciate that, thank you. If there's no other questions or comments from anyone, I don't see anybody. I'm going to look for a motion. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Oh, we did go to the audience. I'll check one more time. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak? No one's jumping up? All right, good. Motion is in order.
I'm going to make a motion to offer an approving resolution
Okay.
that the request to operate an on-premise tasting room permit in conjunction with a microbrewer license to allow the sale and consumption of beer at 30959 5 Mile Road is hereby approved, subject to city council approval and the following conditions. 1, city council waiving the 1,000-foot separation requirement between this location and the nearby Class C licensed establishment pursuant to section 6.09 2A. 2, that this location shall be in compliance with the Michigan Liquor Control Act. And 3, this waiver used for this license is granted to this petitioner only, and any new user of this license is required to seek and receive city council's consent prior to the transfer.
Thank you, Mr. Naro. Is there support?
Mr. Chair, I could support that motion if the maker of the motion would be willing to add a one-year sunset onto the
For a 1-year sunset, yes.
support.
Okay, we have a motion that's been slightly amended, made by Ms. DeNaro, supported by Mr. Long, which includes a 1-year sunset. Mr. Tormina, is that
Well,
understandable?
we'll have to, I think I understand the intent of adding that, but we'll certainly have to fabricate some language that is very specific in terms of the date and the circumstances under which it would, it'd have to stop self-distributing should they reach that point in time and not have a license secured.
Okay, so everyone's clear on that. If there's no, is there any questions on the motion? If there's no questions on the motion. Motion to approve, we need a roll call.
Mrs. DeNaro.
Yes.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Bonjero.
Aye.
Mr. Ventura.
Aye.
Caremagno says no. Chairman Wilshaw.
Votes no. Motion passes. We'll go to city council with an approving recommendation. And that takes care of this item. Thank you for coming this evening. Wish you luck on your proposal.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now we move on to the pending items section of our agenda. This is items that we have discussed previously. Item number 3.
Petition 2023-04-01-02 submitted by FGN Holdings pursuant to sections 13.13 and 13.15 of the Livonia zoning ordinance as amended, requesting to rezone the properties at 19380 and 19384 Newburgh Road, located on the east side of Newburgh Road between 7 Mile Road and St. Martin's Avenue in the southwest quarter of Section 5 from rural urban farm to N1 neighborhood.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. This item was tabled at our May 9th meeting. Is there a motion to remove this item from the table?
So moved.
Is there support?
Support.
We have a motion by Ventura and Bonjero to remove this item from the table. If there's no objection, I think we can safely show 6 to do that. I don't see any objections. Mr. Tormina.
At this point, we have no new information to present. The petitioners are here and can address the commission.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you, Mr. Tormina. We will now go to the petitioner. Feel free to come forward to our podium and let us know what has transpired between our last meeting and this one. Good evening.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Good.
How you doing?
We tried to approach the people on the south side. I actually called a few people in the city to get the underground to see how much it would cost to tap in, because the sanitary is on the west side, so there's 2 private lines that go directly to Newburgh Road that serves the property on 19380 and the property that's directly south. So we'd have to put up a whole new sanitary, public sanitary, from boring underneath the road all the way to Newburgh to service 9 houses if we went to the N2 zoning that we're talking about. Well, with the price of the development cost, we made few offers to the people south. They're not gonna negotiate on the price. They would not budge off their price to make it worthwhile. Obviously, I told Lou about it. Try to get the N1. If the N1 doesn't get approved, then I would just take his and keep it at RUF and just do 3 houses. It would affect the south side, because obviously if we do RUF of his property right now, on the south side, they would have to do RUF. So instead of putting 9 houses total, it would eventually only be 8 houses if the south side ever developed, if they ever sell, if they ever do whatever they choose to do with it. They would just not budge off their price, and with the amount of development cost, it's not worth what they're asking for it.
Okay, and just for our record, we know who you are, Mr. Yaldo, but can you please state your name and
Oh,
address for our
Frank
record?
Yaldo, I'm sorry.
Louis Eldon.
Perfect, thank you. That way we can attribute your comments to your name. Is there any questions or comments from any of our commissioners in regards to this item?
Mr. Chair, I was writing the notes here.
Understood.
So you originally came to us with how many parcels on this property?
4.
4. And you're saying a sewer problem?
In order, well, we came originally with 4 on his property. When we talked at the private hearing in the beginning, somebody questioned, I believe it was Mr. Ventura, what would happen on the south side, because it would affect what would happen on the south side. So when we came to the public hearing last time, we tabled it to negotiate with the people on the south side to develop everything all at one time. If they were willing to come to the table and negotiate, I've been able to go to N2 zoning instead of the N1 that we're asking and put 9 houses on everything all combined together if they were willing to budge off their price. Unfortunately, they're not. So on his just private property, obviously he'd like to get 4 to make it more worthwhile so he won't take a loss on it. If we don't get the 4, I would just keep it RUF and build on 3 houses.
Okay, and last time the issue, if I remember right, there was an issue, the neighbors were bent out of shape about the narrow lots that didn't really fit the area. So your current proposal is for 3 lots at 70-foot wide? What's the width of the lots?
No. The current proposal, if right now it's at N1 zoning, if it gets denied, then I would just comply with RUF. And he has enough space, 236 road frontage, I would just have to readjust them to do RUF, and every single lot would be 78.66. It meets all classifications. Because he has 2 parcels currently right now, one's 186 feet and one is 50. Together combined is 236 feet. There's no sense in even going N2 zoning or rezoning anything. I would just keep it RUF and put 3 lots on there at 78.66 a lot, which RUF, the requirement is 75 road frontage. He has enough to do that. He'd like to get 4 to break out to make a profit, not take a loss on the property, but unfortunately, with the people on the south side not coming to the table, they're not negotiating. Residents in the area really didn't want narrow lots at, I think it was gonna be 59.6 feet, so we just have to keep it RUF.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carmagno. Any other questions, comments?
Mr. Chair, just
Mr.
one
Bonjero, yeah.
little question. There, it looks like there's still an unpaid water sewer bill. Is it still open?
We paid, I
No,
paid
that was paid, yeah.
That was paid.
Okay. It's showing that in here it's still, oh, there's $796. Has
It
been
should be paid.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bonjero. Any other questions or comments? Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak for or against this item? There is one person getting up. Mr. Yaldos, if you would please step aside for just a moment. We'll give an opportunity for some of our residents to make a brief comment. Good evening, ma'am.
Hello, my name's Patty Riggio. I live at 37204 Breton Drive. I'm the president of the Willow Woods Homeowners Association, And we are not in favor of the N1 zoning as it has been expressed in the past. It doesn't match the homes in the area or the lot sizes that are in the area. We think it would be not to the benefit of our homeowners association to have smaller property sizes and smaller homes that back up to our subdivision. So passing that on with you for your consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. I believe there's a couple other folks who would like to make a comment. So I'll let them do that. Good evening, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Kathy Mancini. I reside at 37146 St. Martin Street, and I'm against the N1 zoning for the smaller lots.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that comment. Anyone else wishing to speak on this item? I should have said I'm delinquent in my duties here. On pending items, audience participation is supposed to require unanimous consent of the agenda of the commissioners. I assume that there's nobody on the commission that objects to hearing those comments.
Not now.
Because you've heard them now. Anyway, so thank you. We're just a really nice group here, and we like to always give people a chance to comment. If there's no other comments from anyone in the audience, Mr. Yaldo, is there anything else that you'd like to say before we make our decision?
No, sir.
You're all set? Okay, thank you. I will now go to the commission to make a motion. A motion is in order.
Chairman?
Mr. Tormina.
I'd just like to go back and explain, I think, what Mr. Yaldo Frank was trying to explain on the zoning.
Correct.
So the N1 has a minimum lot width of 50 feet. And what they're proposing would be 4 conforming lots, equal size, that would all be 59 feet. So they would exceed the N1 requirements by 9 feet. If the zoning remained the same, RUF, including the land to the south, they could get 3 conforming 75-foot wide lots on this lot. The third lot there would be 11 extra feet with the roughly 236 feet of frontage. So you have 11 extra feet on these 2 parcels by keeping the zoning the same. When you look at the property to the south, and you divide that into, let's say, the minimum lot width under RUF zoning, you end up with 5 buildable lots with a remnant of 47 feet. So if you take that 47 feet and you, on the south and you add it to the 11 feet that would be resulting here, you could not get that ninth parcel. Under N2 zoning, with a minimum width of 70 feet, and again, looking at all of the frontage along Newburgh Road, you'd get 3 conforming lots on these 2 parcels, 70 feet wide each. The extra width would be 26 feet. So one of the lots could be 96 feet. On the property to the south, you could get 5 conforming lots, again, all 75 feet, or 70 feet in width, with the largest, the surplus being 61 feet. So if you add the surplus on land to the south, 61 feet to the 26 feet, now you have enough for a 9th lot. And I think that's what Mr. Yaldo was trying to explain, is the difference really between N2 and RUF would be 1 additional building site, and the lots would all be at least 70 feet in width, as opposed to 59 feet in width. So I just wanted the commission to understand what your options might be, whether to consider N2 or N1, or excuse me, RUF, looking at the future development of that property to the south.
Thank you, Mr. Tormina. I appreciate that explanation, and it is worth noting to the commission that really we have more or less 3 options available to us. We can approve the rezoning to N1, and they can move forward with the proposal as they've presented it. We can always rezone to a lesser intensity rezoning, zoning, which would be an N2 in this case, or we can deny the item, which would leave it at RUF.
Correct. I just want to understand the full.
And there's differences between each one. Yes. All right. Any questions or comments?
Mr. Chair.
Let Mr. DeNaro go first.
So just for clarity, they do not want N2. They either get N1 or they want it to stay the same? Is that my understanding?
Well, as, I think what the N2 zoning would still allow in the future, the remnants of both parcels, to be combined for a 9th lot. You could not achieve that with the RUF zoning. I'm not sure if, if they fully understand that. I think Frank does, they're willing, I think, just to develop the 3 lots. Whether or not they would all be of equal size or not, that would be their decision. Whether or not they see the future opportunity potentially of working with with either this owner, with the owner to the south, who they are today, or some future owner. I don't know.
There's a benefit to them for an N2 over
Possibly,
RUF.
yes. Possible future benefit.
Okay.
And, sorry, just a follow-up question to that. And right now, it's not feasible because the sewage line is on the south property that they would have to tap into?
I'm gonna let him respond to that. He's more familiar with the
Mr.
cost
Rialdo, if you want to come
implications.
forward, that way our vast TV audience can hear you.
So the main sanitary right now, there's water on the east side of Newburgh. The sanitary is on the west side. The 2 sanitary lines that are feeding the 2 properties are both private lines. So they're 6-inch lines. We would have to bring a brand-new public sanitary over, and that's aside from doing a storm drain too. With the amount of development cost that has to go in and what they're asking, there's no way. They're gonna end up being approximately just to develop it, almost $140,000 a lot with their price. It's not worth that much money. It doesn't make any sense. I'd prefer to get N2 zoning for the future, absolutely. If she never budgets off that price, the problem with going to N2 zoning and she never moves, and we wanna develop and put 3 houses, if I go 70 feet, that last one, as Mr. Tormina said, whoever buys that last house will never sell me that small strip that's 15 feet to add down the line to create a 9th lot. So at that point, I would just keep it RUF. They would be losing on the south side if it stays RUF because they're only gonna get 5 houses.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. DeNaro, Mr. Carmagna?
Thank you. That answered my question.
All right. Great minds think alike. And any other questions, comments?
Just a point of
Ventura?
clarification, Mr. Chairman. So the advantage of the N2 zoning is totally dependent upon this petitioner and some unknown future owner of the south parcels configuring their lots in such a way as they might be able to cooperate and come up with the 9th lot.
Correct.
It's totally speculative, and as
Completely.
the petitioner said, he's got to put that land somewhere, and it may not be available to the parcels to the south to create the extra lot.
Yeah, it's a difficult situation
Yep.
for him.
Yep.
Because the value probably rests at that point, absent any kind of agreement or something that looks possible. It's better for them to keep those lots all as wide as possible for their value.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Ventura. Any other questions? If not, a motion would be in order.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Ventura?
excuse me, I'm going to offer a denying resolution that the request to rezone the properties at 19380 and 19384 Newburgh Road from RUF to NY is hereby, N1, is hereby denied for the following reasons. Number 1, the petitioner has failed to affirmatively show that the proposed zoning change would be compatible with and in harmony with the surrounding neighborhood. Number 2, the proposed zoning change is inconsistent with the established pattern of the surrounding development and would adversely alter the area's character. Number 3, the proposed zoning change is not needed to develop the property. And number 4, the proposed zoning change would allow lots that are narrower than what exists throughout the surrounding area. And finally, number 5, the existing RUF zoning is more consistent with the established pattern of the development and character of the area.
Is there support?
Support.
Is that Mr. Bonjero?
Yes.
Ah, okay, thank you. We have a motion to deny by Mr. Ventura, supported by Mr. Bonjero. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, if the secretary is ready, please call the roll on the motion to deny.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Caremagno.
So the rezoning of the property does not obligate him to build anything right now. Right? There's no obligation to build anything right now. The property's just getting rezoned, the proposal is, so he's not obligated to build anything. Could this be reversed before something's built?
Oh, well, it still has to go to council for,
Well,
hearing.
proposing it passes, could it be reversed if nothing's ever built here? Back to N2?
well, I mean, it's gonna remain RUF under the current resolution.
Yeah, we're not changing.
Well, that's what I mean, could it?
Could there be could they seek a rezoning in the future? Absolutely. Yeah, there's nothing that prohibits them from coming back in the future.
So, no, thank you.
Yes,
Thank you. Okay.
Yep, makes sense. Clear as mud?
Absolutely clear as mud.
Okay, any other questions from anyone? If not, please call the roll on the motion to deny.
Mr. Ventura.
Aye.
Mr. Bonjero.
Aye.
Mrs. DeNaro.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Caremagna votes aye. Chairman Wilshaw.
Votes aye, motion passes. It has, recommendation of denial has been made. This will go on to city council with that recommendation, and we'll see what happens. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming tonight. Next, we go on to the miscellaneous section of our agenda, item number 4.
Petition 2000-12-02-38, submitted by Craig Gerard on behalf of Hunters Grove Condominium Association, requesting to amend Council Resolution number 785-01 and the approved site plan to replace existing landscaping with vinyl fence located on the east side of Newburgh Road between 5 Mile Road and Ladywood Road in the southwest quarter of Section 17.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Mr. Toromina.
Thank you. This request would amend the approved site plan and landscape plan for Hunters Grove Condominiums, which is located on Newburgh Road, just north of 5 Mile Road. Hunters Grove is a 36-unit attached cluster development that received a special waiver use approval in 2001. It was approved as a planned residential development mainly because of the parcel's narrow depth, which measures roughly 240 feet. As a result, the distance between the right-of-way along 5 Mile Road and the rear of the first row of condominium buildings is only 30 feet. Within this area, the approved plan showed a 4-foot-high berm planted with various evergreens, deciduous trees, and shrubs. The plan also showed a row of 11 sugar maples that would have been spaced evenly along the right-of-way of Newburgh. However, the maples were later replaced with 26 Bradford pear trees. So those are the trees that you see between the curb and the sidewalk, and they would not be impacted as part of this project. The current plan removes the original planted material on top of the berm and flattens the top, leaving it about 1.5 feet in height. For screening, the trees and the shrubs would be replaced with a 6-foot-high white vinyl privacy fence that would be installed on top of the berm and would run the full length of the property, which is over 800 feet. The new fence would be set back roughly 5.5 feet from the right-of-way and 6.5 feet from the sidewalk along 5 Mile Road. It would stop short of the 2 driveways to allow proper sight distance for motorists for both the sidewalk and the roadway, and the new landscaping, including various species of shrubs, ornamental grasses, and flowers would be planted on the side of the fence facing the road. And I believe the petitioner submitted a rendering depicting what that would look like, and that rendering is here in the middle. So the types of shrubs that they would plant at the base of the fence are shown on the bottom of this drawing and on the top, and then the center shows what that would look like. Mr. Chairman, there is no correspondence related to this site plan amendment petition.
All right, and we did receive a you do receive this rendering, which we asked the petitioner to provide at our study meeting, so
Correct.
we appreciate that. Our petitioners are in the audience. Feel free to come forward to our podium, and we can discuss this item.
Where do you see the rendering? I can see it.
It is in an email.
Yeah, and I can zoom in on that area.
My name is Craig Gerard. I live at 15768 Hunters Grove Court. I'm also the property manager for Hunters Grove. And I want to pass these pictures that we took as to why we want to do this. And this is,
I'm John Watkins. I'm the president of the Hunter Grove Condo Association. I live at 15707 Hunter Grove.
Thank you, Mr. Gerard and Mr. Watkins, for coming this evening. Is there anything else that you'd like to tell us from what we've already discussed so far?
no, this is a tough decision by the board and the homeowners to take down the pine trees because for 20 years, or almost 20 years, they've given us a nice buffer for noise and privacy. And as you can see by some of the pictures, the privacy is now gone. The noise factor is elevated because they're dying. And you can't replace them because they don't sell them because there's a disease for blue spruces and white spruce that you can't even replant them. And there's one picture in there of stuff that we've tried to replant and has died immediately within a year. And we just, to be honest, we can't afford to just keep putting more and more money into this. So we looked at the fence we had Mark out about almost 3 years ago, I think it was, and showed him what we wanted to do. And this is probably the most economical way for us to do this project. And we still will have some type of berm, but we can't leave it at that height because the support for the fence would have to be, the poles would have to be about 12 to 16 feet long. So we want to taper it, and the contractor we looked at doing it is going to spread it all out and seed it in the back, and we haven't decided whether we're going to seed or sod the front. We have sprinklers there, so the stuff will live. And that's about all. I mean, unless you got any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gerard. Is there any questions of our petitioner?
No?
No questions?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Caremagno?
I know we talked last week, or last time you were here, let's say that. There's no other type of plantings on that berm that would survive, blue spruce trees, grass that grows, the tall grass. There's nothing other, no other landscape options that you feel will suffice?
If you do that, you don't get the privacy. That's why we're looking at keeping the berm at about a foot and then putting a 6-foot fence on top. And one of the drawings that was submitted before shows a sight line from the street on what you can see. And that's the biggest concern for the neighbors. Because if I had my way, I'd have pulled those pine trees out already because 3 just fell on my house when we had that storm in March. And they're really in bad shape. And if we can get started on this year, we're going to.
Another issue that we have is a lot of our residents are elderly, and there's a fear factor there, whether it's real or perceived, they feel it. And, for example, my neighbor's 97 years old, who's next door to me. She's got about 4 locks on her front door. And we have quite a few elderly folks in there that are fearful. I say that not to be comedic, but they really do fear that. That's just another point that we're looking at. And we are going to have, I think, Craig, aren't we going to have a gate on that fence too?
Yeah, there's going to be 1 or 2 gates put in so we can access by walking through to get to the sprinkler timers, and that will be locked on the inside, and so.
Is there been any thought about leaving the berm higher and putting a shorter fence, 4-foot fence versus a 6-foot fence?
No, because by the time they come in, Anglin Construction, I'm sure you're familiar with them, they're going to do the work. And by the time they come in and take these pine trees out, the berm is gonna be all distorted anyway, so that's why they're gonna take and spread the what dirt is left to make it presentable to put a fence. We could leave the berm the way it is, but we'd have to bring in dirt because there's gonna be massive holes when all these stumps come out. I think there's probably roughly 150 trees along there.
Well, what I'll say is, the concern I've got is the starkness of that white fence for 800 feet or whatever that is there. That's just it's a stark difference to what's there now.
Right.
And that is, I gotta say, some of the concern I've got.
I was told tonight by my Supreme Allied Commander, it will not be white.
No, we're looking at
So
toning
what'd you
it
tell you?
down. When we first submitted this, we have an engineering firm that did this for us, and they put white, but we're looking at maybe the taupe color fence, so it's not a
Bringing it, so it
bright,
doesn't, yeah, I agree with
bright,
you.
Okay.
sharp, like you said. Nobody's in favor of bright white.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Ventura?
have you looked at alternative plantings like arborvitae and other kinds of dense upright shrubs that are commonly used all over the city to constitute living walls, such as you've had?
We did discuss that, and I would invite you to come in and see what happened to the arborvitaes in March. And we are putting come-alongs next to the decks to pull them back up, because they've been there again 18, 20 years. And to replace them with 4-footers, it takes all the privacy away from the people on the decks.
I'm gonna
And
have
if
to
we had
disagree
those
with
along
you.
that whole-
I
Well,
have 60 arborvitaes in my yard,
We have
and
them fall
they take a little bit of maintenance, but they produce an
which we're
absolutely
trying to
opaque wall.
which we're trying to get away from on this whole project. And if you drove through our inside, you can see what we've done to make it more of a maintenance-free, because the maintenance is costing us $10,000-15,000 a year just to replace dead bushes and trim. And that's why we've gone to stones on the inside, which we will, which we will have on the outside under the fence with a weed barrier so weeds can't come up, and the stones will come down to where the grass is and where the bushes are. So we're trying to make it, and most of the stuff you see in there is a maintenance-free shrub that we're putting in. It costs a fortune to have people come in and trim every year. It costs a lot of money to have people take Stella doors and cut them down every year. We have to pay for that. There's only 36 of us, and our landscape bill and grass bill is our highest cost there. So to answer your question, that's why we're looking at maintenance-free things that we can put in that. You pay up front more money, but down the road, we won't have to increase our dues where people can't afford to live there then.
Got it. All right, any other questions from any of our commissioners? There is no one left in the audience to comment unless you would like to.
Oh, yeah, there's one person.
She knows about.
Thank you for your time, by the way,
I do have
too.
one question that I will ask. I usually save my questions for the end. Have you done a cost analysis, sort of a side-by-side cost analysis of what it would cost to put this fence and land, and you're putting in some new landscaping and tearing out old landscaping. The cost of what this project would cost versus removing the existing landscaping and replanting with a new landscape plan that involves arborvitaes or other types of pines and so on. Do you have a side-by-side comparison?
Yeah, we did that when we had Mark out, before Mark even came out, and we looked at the cost, because the berm's got to be readjusted, because to take those pine trees out, they're such big rooted. So that's where the cost is to redo that berm. The cost of the fence is lower than the cost of buying all new bushes or trees or whatever you want to say. So we did do an analysis, see which way is the best way to go. If people wouldn't worry about the privacy, I would like to go back in and redevelop that whole, from the sidewalk all the way to the backyards, and come in and out, make it real nice with different trees and that. like, I have pictures of different places that have that. But cost-wise, it doesn't make sense. We're already looking at over $150,000 to do this project. And 36 people got to foot that bill. And we did do an analysis, and the fence is cheaper than the bushes. The labor has to be done no matter which way you go.
Okay.
Okay?
All right, thank you for answering that question. If there's no other questions or comments from any of the commissioners, then a motion is in order.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Long.
I'll offer an approving resolution and see where it goes.
Okay.
That the request to amend council resolution number 785-01 and the approved site plan to replace existing landscaping with a vinyl privacy fence for Hunters Grove condominium is hereby approved, subject to the following conditions. Number one, that the landscape plans identified as sheets 1, 2, and 3 are all dated April 21st, 2023, prepared by Michael L. Priest and Associates, are hereby approved and shall be adhered to. Number two, that the landscape plan identified as LP1, dated October 17th, 2022, as revised, prepared by Michael L. Priest and Associates, is hereby approved and shall be adhered to. And number three, that all conditions imposed by Council Resolutions 524-01 and 785-01 in connection with petition 2000-120238 shall remain in effect to the extent that they are not in conflict with the foregoing conditions.
Okay, is there support?
Okay, then.
Support.
All right, we have a motion to approve by Mr. Long, supported by Mr. Caremagno. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Caremagno.
I'd like to see that it's not a white fence, that it's a earth tone fence if this goes through.
Okay.
So, acceptable?
All right, the maker and seconder have said that condition to make it a non-white fence is acceptable. We're looking for earth tones. Is there any other discussion on the motion? If there's no other discussion, if the secretary is ready, please call the roll on a motion to approve.
Mr. Long?
Aye.
Caremagno votes aye. Mrs. DeNaro?
Nay.
Mr. Bonjero?
No.
Mr. Ventura?
No.
Mr. Wilshaw?
Vote no. And that motion fails. Is there another motion? Someone's got to offer one.
I will offer a motion to deny that the request to amend Council Resolution 785-01 and the approved site plan to replace existing landscaping with a vinyl privacy fence for Hunters Grove condominium is hereby denied for the following reasons. One, that the petitioner has failed to affirmatively show that the proposed amendment is in the best interest of the city of Livonia. Two, allowing this type of replacement along the development's Newburgh Road right-of-way would be detrimental to the aesthetic quality and appeal of the surrounding area, and thereby inappropriately altering the character of the neighborhood. Three, that the proposed transformation would have a negative effect and would set an undesirable precedent in the area. Four, that the proposed change is incompatible to and not in harmony with the other neighborhoods in the area. And five, that the landscape screening and berm along Newburgh Road shall be permanently maintained in a healthy condition.
Is there support?
Support.
All right, they have a motion to deny the site plan as proposed by DeNaro and Ventura. Is there any discussion on that motion? There's no discussion. If the secretary is ready, please call the roll.
Mrs. DeNaro?
Aye.
Mr. Ventura?
Aye.
Mr. Bonjero?
Aye.
Mr. Long?
No.
Caremagno votes no. Chair Wilshaw?
Votes aye. Motion passes. That will be a denying motion. The petitioner does have 10 days in which to appeal this decision in writing to City Council. And if you choose to go that route, then the City Council can, you'll have an appeal process. I think that's all we have on this item. We only have one item left on our agenda, which is the approval of minutes, I believe. And let's see.
Everybody here?
Let's see, let's take a look. This is the minutes of the 1,199th meeting. Let's take a look. I have, oh, thank
Good
you.
night.
Good evening. I have them here. Let's see. Everyone was present.
All right, so number 5 is the approval of the minutes of 1,199th meeting, public hearing, and regular meeting held by the Planning Commission on May 9th, 2023.
All members were present. Is there a motion to approve those?
So
Make a
moved.
motion. to
Dave,
approve.
I support.
All right, we are going to go with Bonjero and Long on that. And that's to approve. Is there any objection to showing 6? If not, we'll show 6 to approve those. And that takes us to the end of our agenda. Is there any other business to come before the commission? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
By Denaro, supported by
Support.
Bonjero. And again, if there's no objection, I think we can safely show 6 to adjourn the meeting. No one's objecting, so the meeting has been adjourned. I do want to thank Livonia Television staff for bringing this meeting to the community, and I will adjourn this meeting at 9:01 p.m. Good night, Livonia.